Hello audience, in this video we're fixing the floor pan. So looking at the floor, there's a few challenges to watch out for. Now up here, underneath here, there's a channel spot welded to it, presumably to hold the front seat. Now, I want to try to avoid digging into spot welds because removing them and reinstalling them, it's a lot of work. It's not impossible, but it's better to avoid it if we can. The good news is the damage is nowhere near here, so I think we can avoid that. Now back here, around where the rear seat goes, the, lack of a better term, frame rail goes across here, underneath, which is where the spring attaches to. Then there's a box section around here which holds it to the rocker. And all that extends all the way out to here, and it's spot welded to the floor pan. I don't think we're going to be able to avoid this. We're probably going to have to cut into it and fix it, but that's not really a problem. On this side is just spot welded to the rocker, pretty standard. I don't know if we're going to cut it here and leave a flange to attach the new one to, or just drill the spot welds out. We'll see. And that's about it. The good news is the damage doesn't really extend any further than here, towards the middle of the floor, and not up to the rocker. So this is still a fairly simple repair. So I got a patch panel. I got this from falconparts.com. They're about 180 bucks, not including tax or shipping. At first I was going to make my own patch panel because this, even though I don't really have a problem with the quality of it, most of it I'm not even going to use. Just this section here, and the rest of it's going to end up in the trash. I did try making a patch panel myself, and it was actually coming out pretty good for a while. I actually made tools to put the beads in it, but I was getting a little greedy. I started using heat to get the beads more sharp like the originals, and yeah, heat warped it like crazy. I tried heat shrinking it for a while, and I just gave up on it. Made a lot of mistakes. Now if I started all over again, I probably could make a good usable one, but I just decided my time is worth more to me than that. And since this is a commercially available ready-made part, I just bought it. And just a reminder of what was wrong with it. When we started out, this hole here was added for seat belts, and it's rusted open a little bit. We also found a few holes through it around here. Most of these I punched open with a chisel, but they were really thin anyway. So at first I thought just a small patch panel around here was all we needed. Then I started looking at it, and all the way over here, it's also rusted through, and a little bit in the center. Now if you're wondering, why didn't I just make a patch panel for this, make another patch panel for here, and leave the rest of it alone, is because even though most of this is still not rusted through, it is rusted to the point where the metal's a lot thinner and the thickness is inconsistent, which would make it really hard to weld. Most likely to just blow holes through it trying to weld it. Okay, these 3 welds, obviously I didn't do a very good job cleaning it and the welds just didn't hold. These 2 actually did hold, and the steel it was attached to just ripped out of it. So even though that worked, this is still not a good foundation to work with, so we are better off replacing it. After cleaning it up, we've decided that this section back here is solid enough to weld to, so we're just going to leave it. And we got it welded in. I had a few problems with this, so I just turned the camera off until I sorted it out. Now pretty much I just cut this out around the edges because it looked like the floor was still good around here, and it pretty much was. Drilled holes in it, welded it in. I made some templates to make sure the depth and all that was the same as the other side, and that turned out good. Also, added a drain hole like it originally had. And even though the floor was completely gone, the plug that was in it was still good. It's still usable, so we're just going to reuse it. The only real problem I had was it turned out this corner of the floor was a little more rusted through than I thought. So I tried welding it on and it was just blowing holes through it. So I had to make this patch panel and then trim it out just a little bit more. Now, this is kind of tricky around here because right about here there's a brace that holds the parking brake cable, so I couldn't cut it too high. Luckily the rust pitting was not too bad up here and I was able to weld it on. And here's how it looks underneath. Now it's not normal to do this, but I did weld it all the way around from here and went over it with a little bit of filler. And I just went over it with the grinder. I'm not too picky about how this turns out, I just didn't want it painfully obvious that the floor has been patched. And with a coat of paint on this, at a glance, it'll look okay. So that's good enough. I also wire brushed everything under here, so I'm probably going to paint the whole thing like I did the rest of the floor. Also, I went around the entire edge of everything with seam sealer, and I did that after it was painted because I didn't think to do so before it was. So I brushed on a layer of the same rust encapsulator paint that I've been using underneath. This should prevent any rust from happening or from getting worse. Now I'm working on insulating it. Now this isn't really an upgrade because this did have something on it. I don't know what it was, but it was sprayed on like road tar. But the point is it had some kind of insulation on the floor. So not putting anything in its place would technically be a step back. So I'm using Hush Mat. This is pretty much AutoZone's version of Dynamat. Costs about the same. Comes in sheets this size, about 1.5 millimeters thick, whatever that means. I've never actually used this on any of my cars, but I've been around cars that have it, and it is noticeably effective at insulating from heat and noise. I do have quite a few hours of experience in removing this stuff from cars, and I will say, you don't want to do that. So when you put this stuff down, you want to make darn sure it's right where you want it, and you'll never want to take it off again. Great news, everyone. After all that time worrying about this and trying to figure out what to do, the floor is now done. No more temporary repairs, no more, I'll have to take it apart and fix it right sometime. We can assemble it for good now. This is the original rear floor mat, which I knew I had, but it was always dirty and buried under trash, so I never really thought about it. But once I took it out of the car, I just gave it a good cleaning, and surprisingly, it's still pretty nice. It's got some tears, it's got a few extra holes in it, and it's discolored, but it's still flexible. It could be restored if I wanted to. I don't know if I'm going to try and save it or use carpets. I'll worry about that when I do the interior. But for now, I'm just going to reuse it. I just noticed this. It even has a 1960 date code on it. Okay, I just realized. I said I can assemble this permanently, but everything I installed I'm going to have to take back off when I do the interior, but it doesn't matter. The point is the floor is done. Now you may have noticed from about here forward, I didn't even touch the floor. That I did on purpose, because I don't know what I'm going to find up here, and then I don't know where I would stop. May work my way all the way up to the firewall, may end up taking the dash apart. If I want to clean the floor underneath, I'd have to take the transmission out of it, so I decided to stop right about there and worry about everything from here back. Now eventually I plan to do the same thing on the front of the car, take it apart from here forward and detail everything, which it doesn't really need much. From the firewall forward it's pretty good, it's just a lot of stuff never got reassembled. Whatever I find wrong with it from here forward, it's not going to feel so bad knowing that everything from here back has already been finished. So anyway, the next thing to do is to paint the underside of the floor, then I can start assembling the brake lines and the cables and all that, which I'm working on right now. But anyway, that's it for now. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.